You ever see something so real your brain refuses to believe it didn't happen? Yeah, this one messed me up good. And if you've ever driven at night down a frozen stretch of highway, you might want to keep your eyes on the road. And your door's locked. Let me tell you something about trucking long haul through the Midwest in winter. It's a different kind of lonely. Not the quiet, peaceful sort. I mean the kind of lonely where the road ahead feels like it's swallowing. You and your headlights only reach as far as they need to before darkness gulps them down. There's no moon. The snow keeps falling sideways. Your own engine starts sounding like it's whispering things it shouldn't. You get used to the quiet. The static on the radio becomes white noise. The hum of your tires turns into a lullaby that tugs at your eyelids. You pass town signs for places no one's heard of, and after enough hours behind the wheel, something weird happens. You stop feeling like you're moving forward. It feels more like the world's standing still, and you're the one being dragged backward. That's where I was mentally when I saw her. Highway 47, outside Dunning. Locals call that stretch the Dead Mile, or sometimes Ghost Curve. I hadn't heard the legends then, but if I had, I probably still would have stopped. Because when you see someone out there in the middle of nowhere, middle of winter, alone, you stop. You just do. She looked like she'd stepped out of a Victorian photo. Long black skirt, thin white blouse, no jacket, no boots, nothing that made sense for 12 below. Her hair was soaked, hanging heavy and dark like a curtain. She was facing away at first, standing right near the shoulder like she was waiting for someone or about to walk into the road. I slowed down. My lights hit her and she turned her head just a little. No expression, no emotion. Just empty eyes that made my stomach do a backflip. I tapped the brakes, swung onto the shoulder, and rolled to a stop 20 feet from where she was. My headlights cast a long, narrow cone, and she stood at the edge of it, half in shadow, half in light, like she couldn't decide where she belonged. I cracked the window. "Ma'am, you all right?" I called. My voice came out weird, muffled by wind and snow. I could barely hear myself over the soft, crunching sound the tires had made on the icy gravel. No answer. She didn't flinch, didn't move, just stood there like her feet were frozen into the earth. Now listen, I've seen some weird stuff. Over the years, I've picked up folks who were strung out, lost, or just trying to hitch a ride out of a bad situation. But this felt different. Wrong, in a way I couldn't explain. Still, I killed the engine, opened the door. The cold hit me like a slap, sharp and immediate, seeping through my jacket like it had claws. "Hey!" I tried again, stepping down from the cab. My boots crunched in the snow. Nothing. I took a few steps closer. "You need help? You all right?" That's when it happened. She turned, slowly, and locked eyes with me, and then she was gone. No movement, no sound, no footprints, no sign of struggle. Just gone. The air where she'd been seemed still, like even the wind didn't know what to do. I just stood there, frozen. My breath fogged out in thick clouds, and every sound felt magnified. The creak of tree limbs under snow, the hum of my truck idling behind me. I walked up and down, the shoulder with my flashlight, shined it into the woods, checked behind the embankment. Nothing. I even looked under the rig. No prints in the snow. Not a single one. Not even mine anymore. The wind had started erasing them as fast as I made. Then I felt stupid, scared, angry even, because I knew what I'd seen. She was there, my headlights don't lie, but I got back in the cab. My hands were shaking. I turned the heater up and sat there a minute trying to make sense of it. I radioed dispatch. They told me I must have seen a deer or a mailbox, or I was hallucinating from lack of sleep. But I've done this job too long. I know what I saw. And let me tell you something chilling. This wasn't the first time it's happened to someone on that highway. Later, when I told another driver about it at a truck stop diner, he went white as a sheet. Told me about a guy who saw the same thing back in '09, and another one in '03, same woman, same road, same vanishing act. They called her the woman in the wind, sometimes the freezing lady, sometimes just her. Nobody agrees on the name, but they all agree on one thing. She only appears to the ones who are already tired, already slipping, as if she's drawn to weakness, to the cracks in your mind. And that was just the beginning. Because that night wasn't the end of it. It was just her way of saying hello. After she vanished, after I sat there in stunned silence on that frozen highway shoulder, I finally got the truck rolling again. I didn't feel safe, not even with the heater blasting and both doors locked. Every time my headlights caught a tree or a sign, I flinched. My nerves were lit up like jumper cables on a dead battery. The rest of that night should have been a blur. But I remember everything, every mile, every second, because what happened next didn't feel like a coincidence. It felt planned, or maybe invited. About 10 minutes up the road, I clicked on the CB radio. Not because I expected to hear anything, highway. 47's a graveyard for signals, but because I needed to hear something. My own thoughts were getting too loud. Channel 19, that's the lifeline out here. Truckers call it the party line. Chatter, warnings, weather updates, dumb jokes, and every now and then something useful. But that night, what I heard wasn't normal. Static at first, the usual hum, then a voice faint like it was leaking through from another frequency. She walks. When the snow falls. It was a woman's voice. Soft, cold, not like someone talking into a mic, more like someone whispering right behind my ear. I sat bolt upright, checked the channel, still on 19. I turned the squelch knob thinking maybe it was interference, but then she spoke again. You stopped. You saw me? Now I see you. That's when my skin went cold, like the air inside the cab had dropped 20 degrees in a blink. The radio crackled again, and then a different voice chimed in. Voice. Male this time. Raspy. Familiar, but I couldn't place it. Breaker 19, you still out there, Ghost Watcher? Ghost Watcher? I hadn't used a handle in years. Nobody had called me that since I ran a few paranormal hauls back in '07, hauling weird museum pieces across state lines. It was a joke name, a dumb one, nobody should have remembered. I grabbed the mic. Who is this? Silence. Then softly, you picked her up, didn't you? I slammed the mic back in its clip. Nope, I muttered to myself. Hell no. I turned off the radio. 2 minutes later, it turned itself back on. I swear to you, the switch clicked over. On its own, more static. A new voice this time. Not one, actually. Many. Overlapping. Like dozens of people whispering at once. She doesn't like when you leave her. She wants to ride with you. I yanked the plug. Total silence. The relief only lasted a moment, because a second later my rearview mirror shifted. I didn't touch it. It tilted just enough to show me the sleeper cabin behind me, and I saw something move. My heart skipped so hard I thought it'd break my ribs. I didn't look. I couldn't. I kept my eyes on the road, both hands on the wheel, white-knuckled. I told myself it was just the sway of the rig, just the shadows, maybe a jacket shifting, but I knew better, because then I smelled it. I don't know how to describe it any better than that. The air behind me suddenly smelled like a funeral home in winter, like old perfume and fresh snow, and then she laughed. Not loud, just a breathy, broken giggle from the back of the cab. That was it. I swerved onto the next turnout and parked on the shoulder with a screech. Grabbed my flashlight, yanked the door open, and got out. I opened the back of the cab, heart pounding like a hammer. Nothing. No one there. But my blanket was folded wrong. A corner turned down, like someone had just slipped out of it. And the worst part? There were wet footprints on the floor, bare feet, small, leading from the sleeper to the passenger seat. I didn't sleep that night. I drove straight through to my next stop, fighting every instinct that screamed at me to look in the mirror, to check the seat beside me, to listen to the radio. And when I finally parked at the rest area outside of Cedar Springs, I sat there in the lot, engine off, hands in my lap, breathing like I'd just run 10 miles. That's when another trucker knocked on my window. Middle-aged guy, one hat, sleeves rolled up. He looked at me like he already knew. You saw her, didn't you? He asked. I didn't answer. You been on 47, he said. Snowstorm. Still nothing from me. He nodded. She talks on channel 19 sometimes. But that ain't CB chatter, friend. That's a warning. A warning for what? I asked finally. He paused, looked around like he didn't want anyone else hearing, then said, for what's coming next. Once you hear her voice, you ain't driving alone anymore. I don't remember much about the drive to Cedar Springs. It was like I blinked and was there. Like some part of my mind had blanked out, shielding me from whatever else might have happened during those hours in the cab. The sign was lit up like a beacon in the blizzard. Cedar Springs Rest Area. 2 miles. I don't think I've ever pulled in anywhere so fast in my life. Even in the cold, I left the engine running. Something about the silence between the gusts of wind felt too hollow. Like if the motor stopped, the world would too. Inside the rest stop, everything looked normal. Harsh fluorescent lights. The smell of overbrewed coffee and industrial cleaner. One vending machine flashing out of order. A scratched-up map of state highways with a red "You Are Here" dot. There was a guy at the far table, nursing a styrofoam cup and a stale donut. The same trucker who'd knocked on my window earlier. He nodded like he'd been waiting for me. "Didn't catch your name," he said. "Call me Hank," I answered. "What's yours?" He sipped his coffee. "Just call me Redline. That's what everyone on the radio calls me. Retired now. But I used to run long haul out west, until I started hearing her too." I sat down across from him. My hands were still shaking. "She followed you, didn't she?" he asked, voice low. I nodded. The CB came on by itself. I heard her. Then there were footprints in the cab. Wet ones. Redline stared into his cup like it held answers. "She does that. Starts off slow. Innocent-like. First, she gets in your head. Then your rig. Then—" He didn't finish the sentence. "What does she want?" I asked. He looked up. "A ride. Forever." The silence after that hit different. I thought about all the stories truckers pass around late at night. Tales of ghost. Hitchhikers. Crying kids on the roadside. Figures that only show up in your rearview mirror. Most of them sound like nonsense. But this? This was something deeper. Older. "She got anyone?" I asked. "For real?" Redline didn't answer. Just slid something across the table. A photo. Old. Curled at the edges. Showed a man standing by a big rig. Smiling. Windbreaker zipped up. Hand raised in a wave. "She took him," Redline said. "My brother. Last run he made was down 47. Said he picked up a woman in the snow. She never said a word. Just sat there. When he got to the way station, she was gone. Left the door open. And he kept driving. Weeks later, someone found his rig parked in an abandoned lot upstate. Still idling, lights on, sleeper empty. What about him?" Redline looked at me like I already knew. He was sitting in the passenger seat, frozen solid, smiling. I stood up. Nerves too frayed to sit. That's when I noticed something on the window. A smudge. On the glass door. Not from inside. It looked like a handprint. Small. Pale. Like it had pressed gently against the glass. From the outside. Redline noticed too. His jaw clenched. "She doesn't like when we talk about her," he muttered. Just then all the lights flickered. The vending machine let out a beep. And my rig, I could hear it, revved by itself, like someone pressed the gas for half a second. Sprinted outside. The cab door was open. My flashlight beam swept the seat. Nobody there. But a message had been scratched into the frost on the inside of the windshield. Just 3 words. "Let me in." He jumped back, like the truck had bitten me. Slammed. The door shut, locked it. Then looked at the driver's seat. There was something sitting on it, a single white glove. Delicate, like something a woman would wear to a funeral in the 40s. It was soaked through, ice forming around the fingers. I didn't touch it. Didn't move it. I just drove. Back into the dark. That was the last time I stopped at a rest area, and I haven't used the CB since because she doesn't need a radio anymore. Now she rides with me, and every now and then, when the snow starts falling hard and the roads vanish under the storm, I hear the softest laugh from the back seat, like she's just waiting for me to stop again. A few days passed after the rest stop at Cedar Springs. Not peacefully. Nothing felt peaceful anymore, but I managed to keep the rig moving. The road became my shield. As long as I was driving, I could pretend I had control. Dispatch had me hauling a dry load from Chicago to Denver. Standard trailer, full manifest, 2 padlocks, seals intact, no stops planned beyond fuel. Should have been an easy run, But deep down I knew something had changed. The smell hadn't left my cab, that weird sickly mix of cold air and fading perfume. Every time I turned the heater up, it came back stronger. The air fresheners couldn't cover it. Neither could the open window. It was like she'd seeped into the very fabric of the truck. Still, I kept driving, until Cheyenne. That's where everything turned sideways. I rolled into the way station late afternoon. Light fading. Fast behind me. Snow just starting to fall. Guy inside barely looked up from his clipboard when I handed over the logbook. He waved me through. "Pop the trailer," he said. "Routine check." "Sealed load," I said. He shrugged. "Still gotta inspect. Just a peek." Now I'd broken seals before. It's annoying, but it happens. Usually means a repack or a new barcode. No big deal. I got out, hands shaking, not because of the cold. When I walked to the back, I noticed something that made my blood turn to ice. The seal was already broken, snapped clean, like it had been cut from the inside. I stared at it for a long time. The padlock was still on, but hanging loose, swinging just slightly like it had been disturbed. I called over the inspector. "Did you guys already crack this?" He looked confused. "Nope. You drove in with it like that." I unlocked the padlock and swung the doors open, and what I saw inside wasn't on the manifest. There were handprints, dozens of them, on the inside walls of the trailer, some small, some long and slender, like someone or multiple someones had been trapped in there, sliding down the walls, clawing even. But there was no cargo. The trailer was supposed to be full. 50 pallets of electronics, shrink-wrapped and racked. Gone. In their place, a chair old wooden, just sitting dead center in the trailer, facing the open doors like someone had been waiting. And on the seat, another glove, white, matching the one I found in the cab. Only this one was dry, like it had been placed just moments before. I stepped back, throat dry. "This load was full when I left Chicago," I muttered. The inspector raised a brow. "Then where the hell's your cargo, son?" That night I got chewed out by dispatch, accused of losing the load, stealing it, or pulling some kind of insurance scam. They threatened to revoke my route access, said I'd have to file a police report. I didn't care, because deep down I knew that cargo was never real. Not anymore. It had been replaced by something else, something that wanted me to open the doors, that wanted to be seen. I slept in a motel that night, or at least tried to. Lights on, door bolted, chair jammed under the handle. But around 3 a.m., I woke, up with the worst feeling I've ever had, like someone was standing over me. I didn't open my eyes right away. I couldn't. I was frozen, literally couldn't move. Sleep paralysis maybe, but it felt intentional. Then I heard it. 3 knocks, soft, deliberate. From inside the room, not the door, the closet. I didn't breathe, just stared at the ceiling. Then, slowly the closet door creaked open. I heard it move. I heard the click of the hinge. But when I finally got the strength to sit up, flashlight in hand, the closet was empty, except for one thing on the floor, another goddamn glove. I left that motel without checking out, didn't even grab my bag. Got back in the truck and floored it out of Cheyenne like the devil himself was chasing me, and from then on, I kept the trailer empty. No cargo, no pickups, no drop-offs, just me, and whatever the hell else was now riding with me, because every time I stop, every time I close my eyes, feel her presence getting stronger. She doesn't want to be seen. She wants to be remembered. I swore I'd never go back. Not to Highway 47, not to Dead Mile, not anywhere near that cursed shoulder where I first saw her, pale, barefoot, frozen, in place like some kind of cracked porcelain doll. But a week after Cheyenne, I got the itch. That feeling that if I didn't go back, I'd never sleep again, like she was calling me. No, not like, she was. It started with the CB again. Yeah, I swore it off, unplugged it and everything, but one night, middle of nowhere outside Des Moines, the damn thing turned on by itself. Squelch, static. Then, you left me at mile marker 237. My heart dropped. "It's not where I died," she said. "It's where you let me back in." I didn't sleep that night either. Just stared out the windshield, watching the fog swirl in the high beams. half expecting to see her silhouette walking up the road. A day later, I rerouted myself. Didn't tell dispatch. Took back roads. Cut through the edge of Nebraska. And when I finally saw the old wooden sign for Highway 47, I turned on. Snow was falling. Of course it was. She always came with the snow. The road was exactly as I remembered it. Lonely, cracked, no guardrails. Trees hugging the shoulder like they wanted to drag you into them. And then, like clockwork, the sign came into view, mile marker 237. I slowed, heart pounding, engine humming like it knew something I didn't. The shoulder was clear, but the air felt heavy. That's when I saw her again. She wasn't in the road this time. She was standing just behind the trees, maybe 30 feet back. Partially, hidden by a pine. Just the edge of her white blouse, one bare foot poking out from the snow. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't flinch as I pulled the rig to a slow stop. I killed the engine and stepped out. The silence was oppressive. Not peaceful, not dead. It was like the world had muted itself to hear what was about to happen. I took a step forward. The snow didn't crunch. It was like I wasn't even touching it. She tilted her head, just once. And then she stepped toward. No fear, no hesitation. Her eyes were wrong, not black, not glowing, just empty, like twin holes cut out of time. "Why me?" I whispered, though I didn't expect an answer. She stepped closer. That's when I noticed it. She wasn't leaving any footprints. I turned to run back to the cab, but it was gone. I swear to God, my truck wasn't there. Just snow, empty road. Forest behind me. Then I heard the laughter, not just hers, a chorus from the trees, from the sky, from beneath the ground. Dozens of them, men, women, some deep, some childlike. "You saw her. You let her in. Now you drive with us." The voices overlapped until they were deafening. And then I saw them. Figures in the trees, some in trucker jackets, some barefoot, some in funeral clothes, all standing, watching. Silent now, eyes glowing faint white. Mile marker 237 wasn't haunted. It was a portal. Suddenly, I was in my truck again, parked, engine idling, radio silent. Had I fallen asleep, blacked out? My hands were freezing. My boots were wet. And the passenger seat? There she was, just sitting, head turned, looking straight ahead, breathing slow, hands folded, not saying a word. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I drove. Past the marker, past the curve, past everything, and in the mirror. She never looked at me, not once. But the other passengers in the sleeper cab, they were watching. I wasn't scared anymore, not in the regular way. Fear, as you know it, is sharp and sudden. It's the gasp when headlights blind you on a two-lane, the jolt when black ice catches your back wheels, the panic when your brakes fail. But what I was feeling now, it was deep, heavy. Like my bones knew something my brain refused to admit. I was still driving. No trailer, no cargo, no manifest. Just me in the cab of a truck that hadn't been logged in 3 days and probably hadn't been real for longer than that. The CB was unplugged. GPS was dead. Phone wouldn't charge. Every tool meant to ground me in the real world had gone silent. But she hadn't. She sat in the passenger seat, her face always turned just slightly away. Not hiding, but not revealing anything either, like a statue whose eyes you're afraid to meet, and behind her in the mirror. More of them. They came slowly, one by one at first. A pair of work boots materializing in the sleeper, a shadow in the corner, a wheezy breath in the night, then the faces, pale, blank, recognizable. I swear I saw Redline, the old-timer from the Cedar Springs rest stop. His eyes were closed, head tilted like he was asleep, but every once in a while I'd catch him grinning. I drove without purpose, no route, no destination. The woman never spoke, but I always knew where she wanted to go, and so one night, after a long winding stretch through nothing but snow and whispers, I turned back onto Highway 47. I passed the first frost-covered mile marker, then another, and then I saw it. Mile marker 237. Where it had all begun. I stopped the truck, didn't open the door. Didn't need to. The world outside was too quiet. No wind, no snow crunching under tires. Even the engine was whispering instead of humming. She turned to me slowly. Her eyes, two bottomless clouded wells, locked onto mine for the first time, and she smiled, not cruelly, not sweetly, like she'd been waiting. Patient, eternal. "This is where the road ends," she whispered. Suddenly the headlights flickered and then dimmed to grey. Outside, the snow wasn't falling anymore. It was floating, hanging mid-air, like dust in water. The trees weren't swaying. They were bending like they were leaning in to listen. And the road? The road had vanished. What was left was blackness. Not night, not fog, just an endless mouth. An opening, a void in the earth. And from deep inside it, I could hear them. The voices of every lost trucker, every forgotten wanderer, every roadside ghost. They were calling me. Ghost watcher, drive. She reached across the dash and took my hand. Her touch was freezing, but it didn't burn. It soothed. I felt my heartbeat slow, my breath steady, and I understood finally. She was no monster, no demon. She was the road's memory. A living echo of everyone who died where no one came to help, of every soul passed over, every scream unheard, every vanishing written off as a blip on a dot report. And now I was part of her, her driver. I didn't question it. I shifted into gear, and I drove, straight into the black. The cab filled with silence, then light. But not white light, not holy, not warm. A cold blue shimmer like moonlight off metal and bone, a glow that hummed in time with the hum of the engine. I looked around. The sleeper was full now, packed, shoulder to shoulder, ghosts of the highway, faces pale, cracked, frozen in expressions of peace, terror, longing. One looked like a teenage girl, wrapped in a varsity jacket soaked through with melting snow. Another had a long beard and an old-school CB headset, like he'd died in the 80s. And redline. He was still grinning. I don't know how long I drove, hours, days, maybe years. Time stopped mattering. The CB came on again, not crackling this time, just clear. Breaker 19. "Any drivers out there still listening?" The voice was my own, but older, tired, and in the static I heard others answering, names I didn't know, handles I'd never heard, ghost riders. Phantom rigs, all of them checking in, all of them still out here, and that's where I am now. If you're hearing this, maybe you're on the same road. Maybe your CB picks up a voice that doesn't belong, or your headlights catch a woman, standing in the snow, barefoot, silent, waiting. Whatever you do, don't stop, unless you're ready for the last ride. You think you know the road, the dark stretches where no one should be walking. But sometimes when you're driving alone at night, someone gets in your truck, someone who's not supposed to be there. And by the time you blink, they're gone, except for what they leave behind. You ever have that feeling when you're driving alone at night and the road feels wrong? Like it's not just a path for your wheels, but some kind of thin line separating you from something else, something just out of sight. That's how that night started for me. And trust me, it's not a feeling you want to ignore. I was rolling through Montana, hauling freight on that long stretch between Spokane and Boise, the kind of highway where the trees crowd in so tight you'd swear they're listening. Dead Man's Curve was coming up, a bend so sharp it practically bites at your tires. Folks around there said it earned its name from more than a few wrecks and bodies found in the ditch. You could almost feel the air thicken as you approached, like the road itself was warning you. The rain had been coming down steady for hours, fine mist at first, turning into a real slap-you-in-the-face downpour. My windshield wipers were working overtime, swiping left and right like frantic arms trying to push the darkness away. The sky was a flat slab of black, broken only by the red glow of my tail lights, reflecting in the wet pavement. I was driving, steady about 55 mph, my rig's headlights cutting through the night, but barely punching through the fog that was creeping along the shoulder. The radio played some old country tune, but even the music felt drowned out by the storm. Then I saw her. She was standing on the shoulder, right near the edge of Dead Man's Curve. A girl, maybe 19 or 20, wearing a white dress soaked through with rain. Her hair was plastered to her face and neck, but her eyes, man, her eyes were the kind of eyes you never forget. Wide, glassy, and full of something desperate. She wasn't waving frantically or screaming for help. Just standing there, thumb out, like she was waiting forever and hadn't given up hope. Truckers see plenty of hitchhikers. Most of them look sketchy. You get that gut feeling telling you to keep going, keep your doors locked. But this was different. She seemed almost fragile, like a bird that had lost its way in a storm. Still, I hesitated, pulled the rig over, the tires crunching on the gravel as I eased onto the shoulder. "Hey, you all right?" I asked, rolling down the window. She didn't answer right away. Just climbed in, shaking, water dripping from her hair onto the floor mat. Her dress clung to her like it was part of her skin, ghostly and wet. "Where you headed?" I asked. She looked up then, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just the next town. That was it. No name, no small talk." The silence stretched. The storm pressed in on us like a living thing. I glanced over at her, but she was staring down at her lap, hands folded tight. The highway stretched ahead, curves and straightaways disappearing into fog. We drove on in silence, except for the steady drumming of rain and the occasional crackle of the radio. I tried to break the quiet a few times, asking if she needed anything, or if someone was waiting for her, but no response. She seemed distant, like she wasn't really there. The further we went, the heavier the silence became. I kept sneaking glances her way, trying to catch a sign of who she was, where she came from. But her face stayed pale and still, like a photograph. Then came the turn. Dead man's curve. My hands gripped the wheel tight. The rig swayed a little on the slick pavement. The headlights barely lit the edge of the road. That's when I looked over again. She was gone. No sitting there. No footsteps heard. No door opened or closed. Just empty space where she'd been. I slammed on the brakes and yanked the wheel to the side, the rig fishtailing on the wet gravel. Heart, pounding so loud I thought it had burst through my chest. I looked everywhere, back seat, floor, under the seat. Nothing. Then I saw it, a handprint. Faint, wet, cold as ice. Right there on the passenger door handle. I reached out, running my fingers over it. It was like touching a ghost. I wanted to call someone, police, a friend. But my phone was dead, no signal, and the storm was picking up. So I sat there for what felt like forever, staring at that door, trying to tell myself it was some trick of the mind. Maybe I'd been driving too long. Maybe the storm was messing with my head, but deep down I knew better. There's something about hitchhikers, especially those who vanish without a trace, that sticks with you. They're not just stories. They're warnings, and some roads, you don't want to stop on them. The rain didn't just fall that night. It hammered down like the sky was trying to scrub away the memory of what had just happened. The kind of rain that feels heavy enough to drown a man's doubts and wash away the edges of reality. I sat in my rig, heart thumping so loud it drowned out the wipers. That handprint on the passenger door handle kept burning in my mind, cold and wet, like some kind of mark left behind from another world. How the hell did she disappear? I checked everywhere, and the back seat, under the seats, the floorboards. Nothing, no sign of her. The door was locked, the seatbelt buckled. It made no damn sense. So I got out. The rain hit me like a wall. Cold, relentless, soaking me in seconds. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, squinting into the fog that was already rolling in low and thick, swallowing up the road and the trees. The headlights barely pushed through the mist. I walked the shoulder of the highway, eyes darting for any sign, footprints in the mud, a dropped glove, anything. But the rain was erasing everything as fast as it fell. The only sound was the steady pounding of rain, the distant rumble of thunder, and my own breathing. I turned back to the truck, shaking, unsure if I was losing my mind. Back inside the cab, I fired up the engine and eased back onto the road. The highway stretched ahead, empty except for the steady drumming of rain on the roof and the occasional crackle of the radio. And then it happened. A whisper. Not over the speakers, but inside my head. Or maybe it came through the static. "Don't. Stop it." I spun the dial, trying to catch some clear channel, but all I got was white noise. The words echoed faintly, like a warning. Was I hearing things? The storm? Exhaustion? Or something else? My hands clenched the steering wheel. Knuckles. White. I kept driving, trying to shake the feeling of being watched like something was riding shotgun. I rolled into the nearest town as the rain slowed to a drizzle. It was small, nothing but a gas station, a diner, and a handful of motel rooms. The streets were empty, the kind of quiet that presses in on you. At the gas station, I grabbed a coffee and asked the clerk about hitchhikers around Deadman's Curve. I described the girl. The dress, the pale eyes, the wet hair. The clerk's face went pale. Deadman's Curve? You're talking about the girl from the old story, he said, voice low. I raised an eyebrow. He leaned in like he didn't want anyone else to hear. Years ago, a girl was hit right there. They never found her body. Since then, folks driving that stretch keep seeing her, same dress, same look. She gets in their vehicles, talks soft, then vanishes before the next exit. Some say she's still looking for a way home. I felt the chill spread down my spine. I wasn't the first one to pick her up. I wasn't the first to see her vanish, and maybe I wouldn't be the last. That night, I checked into the motel. The thin walls didn't stop the storm from pounding, or the creaks and groans of a building too old for its own good. Sleep didn't come easy. I kept seeing her face, sad, scared, like she was stuck between worlds. I didn't know it then, but that was just the start. The highway held more secrets than I ever dreamed. And the girl in white, she wasn't done with me. Morning came gray and cold, with a chill that seeped right through the thin motel walls. The storm had let up, leaving everything soaked and dripping, but the weight of the night's events pressed down harder than any weather. I was still trying to wrap my head around what happened on Deadman's Curve, that girl. The disappearing act. The wet handprint that felt like a cold slap to my gut every time I thought about it. I figured I'd check my rig before hitting the road again. Needed to clear my head. That's when I saw it. On the passenger seat, where she'd been, lay a small scrap of paper, soaked through, edges curled but still readable. I picked it up carefully, the paper fragile in my hands. Unfolding it, I saw a message, written in shaky, faded ink. Help me find the truth before it's too late. The words sent a shiver down my spine. The handwriting was feminine, like a desperate plea scribbled in a hurry. What truth? Who was she running from? Or was she running to someone? I stuffed the note into my jacket pocket and started the rig, heading back toward Deadman's Curve. I had to see if there was anything I missed. The road stretched ahead, damp and shining. Under a weak sun, the trees still dripping with leftover rain. I slowed down near the curve, scanning the ditch and woods for anything unusual. That's when I spotted something. A small, rusted object caught in the weeds just beyond the guardrail. I climbed down and pulled it out. A locket, cold and heavy in my hand, its metal tarnished by time and weather. I pried it open. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman, smiling softly, her hair curled and eyes bright. She looked familiar. Hell, she looked a lot like the girl I'd picked up. On the back of the locket was a date, engraved deep into the metal, June 12th, 1984. 3 years ago. The same year the story said the girl had died. I felt like I'd stumbled into something much bigger than a late-night ghost story. Someone was trying to tell me something. Back in the cab, I held the locket tight. The highway stretched out before me. But now it didn't feel like just a road anymore. It felt like a thread. A thread I was being pulled along, straight into the heart of a mystery that wouldn't let me go. And no matter how hard I tried to drive away, I knew I'd have to follow. That night, I'd find out just what kind of truth was buried under Deadman's Curve, and why some ghosts don't rest easy. The night air was thick and cold as I pulled off the highway and into the small town just a few miles from Deadman's Curve, the kind of town where the streets were empty. The neon signs buzzed faintly, and every face looked like it had 1,000 stories, some better left untold. I parked my rig near a rundown diner, the kind with a flickering sign that said, "Open 24 hours," but looked like it hadn't seen a full crowd in years. I needed answers. The locket in my pocket felt heavier than just metal and memories. It was a key, a puzzle piece I had to fit somewhere. Inside, the diner smelled of stale coffee and burnt toast. A tired waitress with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes wiped down the counter when I slid onto a stool. She gave me a slow, curious look. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, voice soft but knowing. Like she wasn't just joking. I hesitated, then pulled the locket out and laid it on the counter. She picked it up carefully, turning it over in her weathered hands, tracing the faded engraving like she was touching something sacred. "That belonged to Mary Lou Sanders," she said, voice dropping low, eyes distant. I leaned in. "Mary Lou?" The waitress nodded, swallowing hard like the name carried a weight she'd been carrying for years. Sweet girl, everyone in town knew her. Always smiling, always kind. But she had her demons. Folks whispered she was running from something, or someone. I asked about that someone. She glanced around like the walls might be listening. Her boyfriend, Tommy Harlan. Trouble followed him like a shadow. Mean streak a mile wide. The night Mary Lou vanished? They say he was chasing her. The fight got ugly, then she ran straight onto Dead Man's Curve, and that was the last anyone saw of her alive. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed the locket back. They never found her body. Just silence. Like she was swallowed whole by the night. My chest tightened. I stared down at the locket like it might speak to me. I asked the waitress if there were any old newspapers or records I could look at. Anything about Mary Lou's disappearance. She smiled sadly. "You'll find a pile in the library, but be careful poking around. Not everyone here likes the past stirred up." I thanked her and headed out, the cold night air brushing against my skin like whispers from the dead. Back at my rig, I pulled out a map and traced the route Mary Lou might have taken. The highway, the curve, the edges of town where shadows cling tight, and then I made a decision. If Mary Lou was still out there, or if her story was still being told, I had to see the places she'd been, the woods, the roadside, maybe even that long stretch of empty highway where she'd vanished. The rig rumbled back onto the highway, headlights cutting through the mist. That was already thickening again. When I got close to Dead Man's Curve, I slowed, heart pounding in my ears. The air was different here, heavy. Like the past was sitting just beside me, breathing down my neck. I climbed down and stood on the wet shoulder, eyes scanning the tree line. The night was quiet except for the steady drip of rain from the leaves. Then, out of the corner of my eye, movement. A figure in white, standing just at the edge of the woods. I blinked. Gone, my breath hitched. The wind picked up, carrying with it a faint scent like wildflowers and old rain. I reached out instinctively, but there was nothing, just empty space and the lingering chill of something not quite there. I realized then Mary Lou wasn't just a story. She was still here, still waiting, still trapped between the past and the present. I climbed back into my rig, the weight of the night heavier than ever. The road ahead was no longer just a path. It was a mystery I was pulled into deeper than I wanted. And no matter how fast I drove, I could feel the girl in white watching, waiting. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. The motel room was cold, and the locket still heavy in my jacket pocket. I kept thinking about Mary Lou, her story, and that boyfriend, Tommy Harlan. I knew one thing for sure. If I wanted answers, I had to find Tommy. I headed back into town, stopped by the local library like the waitress suggested. Dusty shelves, yellowed newspapers, and microfilm reels that smelled like forgotten memories. I dug through old headlines and police reports from '84, the year Mary Lou vanished. There it was. Local woman missing after late-night argument. Police. Investigate possible domestic dispute in Mary Lou Sanders' disappearance. No body found, no arrests made, but one line stuck out like a bruise on a page. Tommy Harlan suspected of involvement, but no charges filed due to lack of evidence. I took a deep breath. The name was everywhere, tied to whispers and rumors that stank of fear and violence. I asked around town, trying to find anyone who still remembered Tommy. Most folks shook their heads or gave me wary looks. But eventually, an old man at the gas station pointed me to a run-down trailer on the edge of town. The place looked like it hadn't been lived in for years. Paint peeling, windows boarded up. But the trucker in me recognized something, a fresh set of tire tracks leading up the dirt driveway. I parked down the road and approached on foot, heart hammering. Inside, I found a dusty room filled with remnants, old. Beer cans, faded photos, and scribbled notes pinned to a corkboard. One note caught my eye, a torn photo of Mary Lou and a man, probably Tommy, smiling in happier days. Beneath it, a scrawled message, "She knows too much." Suddenly, a creak behind me. I spun around. An old man stood in the doorway, face weathered and hard. "You shouldn't be here," he growled. Turns out, he was Tommy's uncle, the last family left in town. He told me things no one else would. About Tommy's anger, his jealousy, and a fight that went too far. I don't know if Mary Lou ran or if he... His voice cracked. But the night she disappeared, the mountain screamed. Some say it was the last thing she heard. I left that place shaken. The road ahead was darker than I thought, and whatever had happened between Mary Lou and Tommy, it wasn't just history. It was still alive. That night, as I drove past Dead Man's Curve again, I swore I heard a scream carried on the wind. Not a human scream. Something older, something angry. The girl in white was warning me, or maybe begging for help. The road was dark and slick, rain starting to fall again like it was trying to wash the whole nightmare away. But no matter how fast I drove, I felt the weight of Mary Lou's story pressing down on me. A ghost's unfinished business, pulling me back to Dead Man's Curve. I couldn't shake the feeling someone, or something, was riding with me as I approached the curve. The headlights caught a flicker on the shoulder. There she was, that girl in white, pale as the moonlight, soaked through to the bone, her eyes locked on mine, full of sorrow, fear, and a desperate hope. "Help me," she whispered, voice barely more than a breath. My hands trembled as I opened the passenger door. She climbed in, cold as ice, but solid. I didn't question it anymore. She said her name was Mary Lou. She told me her story, how Tommy chased her that night, how she ran terrified into the woods only to get caught in a fall and break her ankle. She said Tommy left her to die. But that wasn't the worst. She said he buried her there, hidden beneath the trees where no one would find her. My stomach twisted. The scream I heard, her pain echoing through the mountain. She needed me to find her, to bring her home. The radio crackled suddenly, cutting through the silence, static. Then a voice. "Don't trust him," it hissed. I looked at Mary Lou, confused, scared. The voice came again. "Tommy's still here, watching." The air grew thick, the temperature dropping fast, the rig shuddered. I slammed on the brakes. Outside the windows, shadows twisted and writhed, dark shapes creeping from the trees. Tommy, or whatever had become of him. Mary Lou grabbed my hand, her touch freezing cold. "We have to finish this." I followed her into the woods, the trees closing behind us like a trap. We came to a shallow grave, freshly disturbed earth. She told me to dig. Hands trembling, I unearthed bones, brittle, broken. A locket, like the one she gave me, lay tangled. In the dirt, she smiled, a sad, relieved smile. "Now I can rest." Suddenly a roar tore through the night. Tommy's angry spirit rising to fight one last time. But as the first light of dawn broke, the forest fell silent. Mary Lou faded into the morning mist. I was alone, but the curse was lifted, or so I thought. Because the next day, back on the highway, I found a note stuck to my rig's windshield wiper, written in shaky, familiar handwriting. "Thank you, but beware the road ahead." I looked up at Dead Man's Curve, and I knew some stories never truly end.